Hey guys, this is Dan with Gears and Gadgets. Thanks for tuning in. Today I'm going to be revisiting the Slingshot. I did a video like 3 months ago now about, and I'm blown away how much that video or how well that video is doing. 87,000 views in the last 90 days compared to my second best video, 38,000 views. I'm really shocked about how many people are that curious about the Slingshot. And more importantly, I just watched a video from Consumer Reports that was just released July 22nd. Today's the 23rd, so that was yesterday, about the Slingshot. And I want to do a reaction video on this video from Consumer Reports because I see comments from people that are very confused about what the Slingshot is and, more importantly, what it isn't. And my commentary on the Slingshot was, I was actually incredibly impressed with it. It's not lost on me that a lot of people, for some reason, struggle with where this product fits. And that's why we're going to jump into this Consumer Reports video.
This is our impressions of the Polaris Slingshot. Polaris says, Slingshot is a three-wheeled sensation that reignites your... Stop laughing, Jake. I'm trying to get through this. Not a car, and certainly...
Let's just say, yeah, it's not a car. So basically, they're calling it something different because it is very different. It's a three-wheeled vehicle. It's an auto cycle, technically. And for some reason, people really, really want to try really hard to try to cram this into a motorcycle or a car and then judge it in one of those two lights.
Has two front tires and one rear tire. Yep. And it's been in production for about 7 years now. Mm-hmm. It has two seats next to each other. It has a steering wheel, so it feels more like a car, I'd say, than a motorcycle. The car that we rented from Polaris.
Oh, don't say car. Sensation.
The Sensation we rented. Thank you. The Sensation we rented from Polaris had the automated manual.
I'm also disappointed that they rented an automatic for Consumer Reports because these are guys who are trackable guys that are going to be able to really judge this thing in terms of performance. The Polaris Slingshot is not known for having a great automatic, so I really don't know why they rented the automatic.
Yep.
That was my first
paddle shifters,
bone of contention with this.
Paddle shifters on some of the different trims. Slingshot S at $20,799 to the one we rented, which is the Slingshot Signature LE at $35,799, which is a lot of money.
That is pretty crazy. That gets to be pretty expensive.
But I think it just made sense for us to get into this, figure out exactly what it was like to drive. It is the way it looks is outstanding. I mean, the thing is just looks amazing, and you see them around. And I think for a lot of people kind of scratching their heads, they're like, does this make sense? Should I get a Miata? Should I get whatever this thing is? All
right, I'm going to stop here and say, when I had this Slingshot and I was driving it for a couple weeks as a daily driver, I had that same thought process of this or Miata, and that discussion gets to be one of really what are you looking for? Because if you're looking for something that is a recreational vehicle that you're going to just kind of rip around town and maybe take out in the twisties every once in a while, just for like little scenic drives, I think the Slingshot far more compelling. When people start to muddy the waters of comparing this to a Miata, I'll tell you right now, I do not believe for a split second that a Miata is going to garner any conversation at a gas pump. It's not going to get people turning heads unless they're in that Miata group. There's obviously a niche following for Miatas and those little trackable sports cars, essentially. Nothing wrong with that, but the conversation of what you're looking for really is quite simple. Are you looking for a trackable vehicle? I would say go for a Miata. If you're going to do more track days, probably a much more compelling argument for that vehicle. If you're just going for a beach cruiser and around town, maybe cruising out around local bar scene at night sort of stuff, or like somebody who might want that open cockpit motorcycle-like feel, and be a little bit more thrilling of a ride, I think the Slingshot is for that. But man, people really do get lost in that comparison for sure.
it's priced compatibly with something like a Miata or like a sports car. It was time for us to really understand what the heck this was.
Yeah, we gave them 7 years to try and get it right. And,
we give them a
But you got the wrong one. You should have got the manual.
Now, one of the things we have to talk about is this automated manual. Yeah. Now, you can get it, and for years, the first many years of its production, it came only with a true 5-speed manual transmission. Then they put this automated manual in there that you could get working the.
So they go on to talk about what the transmission is. I'm not going to play a whole bunch of this part of the video because it's honestly, it's just getting into the fact that the automatic that they have in this thing is really just an automated manual. So it's a manual transmission with actuators that, do the shifting for you. But again, man, it just drives me nuts that these guys, specifically an auto engineer that is renting this thing to really judge it from the lens of Consumer Reports, they should have gotten it in a manual because my experience driving it with a manual far, far more, what I assume is compelling than what that automatic is. From what I hear about it, I understand it because I can drive manual, and I do not see me personally ever buying this thing in an automatic. It is a vehicle that is just fun to just bang through the gears, and that's part of the excitement of driving this thing. I think they need to redo this, rent the manual, or get their hands on a manual.
I gotta be honest, I never quite wrapped my head around, feeling super comfortable with the car on a curvy road, especially a slightly unfamiliar road. I just never felt like I could push it that hard because I never knew when the rear was going to come around. Now,
but that's the character of the vehicle, and that's again part of it. I think that they are missing in a lot of this commentary is the character of this vehicle is its unique driving characteristics, not better driving characteristics. It's totally different, and if you're going to be pushing it that hard, you probably shouldn't be doing that unless you're on a track anyways. And now you're getting to the point where if you're going to judge it as a track vehicle, yes, then go to a Miata. So again, judging it kind of weirdly because people really struggle trying to understand what they're even judging because it is that different.
The rear does come around, and you actually had a hoot on the track, yes?
It's not bad on the track at all, actually. I mean, again, it's just a mental thing. Like, okay, how many wheels I got?
It's different.
You could push it, and I very quickly got confident with it.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I agree with that also.
It was interesting. You could even drift
I didn't track it,
which
but
was
I did.
Kind of a weird sensation.
I did rip it pretty good in the twist.
See what I did there?
I love how you brought it full circle.
That's
but I mean, to go
skill
and turn the wheel and have opposite lock and have that one wheel sitting there spinning, it was stable. It was definitely stable and that. But
you do gain more confidence after you put some miles on it.
On the street, how everyone is going to actually use these. And
now we're getting back to fair judgment.
It was so interesting. I was so excited to drive this because I love little cars and I love little, go-kart type steering and Miatas. And I had my Toyota MR2 for years. And I thought this was going to be just awesome. Look at the power to weight.
So right off, it's funny because you listen to this and if you pay attention, he starts going back to judging it as a Miata or like a small little MR2. It's not that. So everybody keeps going back to trying to judge it as that. And it's just
ratio and how tiny it is.
It's not a fair comparison by no means.
There's a saying when it comes to little sports cars, right? Oh, handles like a go-kart, right? How many times? Right. Well, I'm sure we've all said that. Right. Yep. This drives like a go-kart.
Yeah,
it does.
And not in a good way. I mean, it's like,
I disagree.
Feels like it's not a finished product. Right. I mean, it's so noisy.
I disagree.
It's so stiff.
So fit and finish for this, I disagree. When I opened the hood of that thing, I was incredibly impressed with how well engineered that frame was. The welds were awesome. The suspension looked far more robust than what I ever would have imagined out of a niche vehicle like this. I was actually very impressed with construction, and I thought it was very well put together. But the characteristics, yes, very go-kart.
And just very,
feeling, I thought in a positive way.
Miata has just telepathic steering.
Right,
this is not like that.
Right.
There's the mechanisms and there's things, and the guy in the go-kart place has to turn the wrench and tighten things up.
The geometry of the front just doesn't give you a good feeling through this. It feels like a go-kart.
It feels like an
up really
actual
strange
cart.
And, it's quick. It responds quick, but it just doesn't feel natural.
It feels it's quick. It's pretty direct. It's got pretty good steering with just one rear wheel back there. It does not handle mid-corner bumps well at all. So this is not a great vehicle. Can I call it a vehicle?
Yes,
This is not a great vehicle for a bumpy road.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And it only makes sense because you have, two wheels up front and then one in the middle. You have on a typical road, if you're driving around enough, you can see there's dips from the four wheels that they kind of create because everybody's driving in those same lanes all the time, creating kind of those ruts essentially. The center of the road has irregular parts of it that aren't driven over at all. And you do pick that up from the rear wheel. So that is, again, part of the character of the vehicle, whether you call it good or bad. It's just all part of what you would expect. So it is certainly different.
Especially at higher speeds. I mean, slower speeds, it's okay. It's pretty stiff, but it handles itself okay. All three contact patches are on the ground.
Right.
But at higher speeds, we have a little bumpy section out on our track, right, where you can kind of just go straight over these bumps in different speeds. And yeah, above like 50 miles an hour, some of these bumps, it starts to feel a little.
And I would give that probably a fair assessment on a high-speed trackable situation where you're going around corners at a high rate of speed. That might feel a little bit uneasy, but I can say at highway speeds, what I found at like 80, 85 miles an hour is holding the wheel. Any little tiny inputs on that wheel would make it want to bounce around. But if you got to the point of just kind of chilling on the highway and, one arm up on the armrest and kind of just holding the wheel, it stayed very true, very comfortable. I never had any moments on the highway where I was like, man, this thing is feeling really sketchy, at least through the steering wheel. What you do have to get used to as a motorcycle rider is being so low. You feel like you're driving a go-kart, and you've got to be very aware that you may be so low that people might not see you in their side mirrors if you're in like a blind spot. The first couple days, I was really, really freaked out by that. But after it was probably 2-3 days, I got very comfortable knowing where I needed to be on the road to make sure. Just takes a little while to get used to it. And we'll talk about safety here in a moment. But yeah, at high speeds on the highway, I was totally fine with it. High speeds on a track, going around corners faster than 50, I could see that getting kind of dodgy.
Concern.
But I mean, beyond that, it's not enjoyable.
No,
like
not
it's
really.
not fun.
Disagree.
Like you go out there and like it's fun to sit in.
Right.
It's fun to be seen in.
Agreed.
It's fun to look at.
Agreed.
Yeah. But when you drive this, it's just, I mean, again, anyone who's driven, a small sports car and knows that feeling.
These
there's so many really fun cars. Your MR2,
got the manual.
It's a fun vehicle to drive all the time. This is like a penalty box. I mean, it's like I'm going and, I used to see these on the street.
Again, you're
I'm
judging
like,
it as a
awesome.
track car.
And now I'm like,
it's not a track car.
Person driving that
Especially
because it's
how
like
expensive it is.
It's just noisy and windy and not fun. I mean, I have a motorcycle license. I've driven motorcycles are really fun. It doesn't have that fun to it. It's just kind of
it's a really a motorcycle kind of experience, right? Like, yes, so I think that's one thing that it does, which you might be able to get from a motorcycle. I'm not a motorcycle rider, but you're way more connected to what's happening mechanically, for better or worse. I'm not really sure.
For better.
If you like that kind of thing, that's great. But like, you just really hear the engine. The exhaust actually exits in front of you, so you're always hearing that. You hear the gear linkages and things moving around, and the tires are right there, so you hear them working. Cool in a sense, but like it kind of gets old pretty fast.
But it's mechanical. It's not a good sound. Like
it doesn't sound great.
Motorcycles sound phenomenal.
It's not an amazing sound.
I so disagree with that. The engagement of hearing the gearbox as you're blowing through those gears, you can hear the whine of the gearbox because it's like right there. I feel like people have a hard time judging what it is. And you can see them kind of doing that here where they all keep going back to the track and Miatas. And it's like, man, it's in between that motorcycle and car, and you need to judge it in that weird in-between space, which is hard to do because there's really nothing else to compare it to.
Over time, I kept fixating on the fact that they gave it 3 wheels, so as a motorcycle, they could skirt all kinds of regulations that are there to protect consumers, notably in a crash. And I think he has a point to some extent.
I struggle with that. I get where they're coming from, but I will say that Polaris doesn't try to hide any of that. They actually do a really good job of labeling all of the safety concerns and recommending helmets and all that stuff too. So yes, it's a product designed with exploitation of loopholes, but it's done in a manner that it is communicated to the consumer. So I don't really find it necessarily like reckless to sell these things for consumer use, but look, I mean, these guys are going to go on and talk about safety and airbags and all that. And sure, if you want to start again, go into the Miata, they're going to have to meet all these regulations for safety. But again, for a product that falls between motorcycle and car and is recommended to wear a helmet, and there are certainly safety issues, these are the same people with Consumer Reports that would talk about Tesla and their safety and their airbags, but nobody's talking about what happens when that Tesla goes 80 miles an hour into a Miata that's also got all the same airbag standards, and you're talking like thousands and thousands of pounds of difference between those two vehicles. And safety is relative. People that are making purchases for our recreational vehicles, whether it be side-by-sides, four-wheelers, dirt bikes, motorcycles, again, everything has risks associated with it, and I'm not trying to say the Slingshot is safe. There are times when you're on the road and you're like, man, I'm vulnerable here, but same thing on a motorcycle. So it's all relative, and if you want to get hung up on the safety aspect, again, we're having the conversation about now we're going to cram this thing into automotive safety standard requirements. But again, everybody who looks at it and judges it, if you start off by saying it's in between a motorcycle and a car, well, then you should judge it in between, not by the standards of either one of those two things, because it's not one of those two things.
Steering wheel. So I just feel like, why sacrifice all the other, especially at this price, the airbags, the safety, the crumple zones. It doesn't have crumple zones, all those things, air conditioning.
Yeah, absolutely. It is not a safe vehicle. There's no question about it. Motorcycle's not a safe vehicle too, but
and that's
safe
something
is relative.
that people I think sometimes forget. Motorcycles are inherently not a safe vehicle.
But I mean, again, if you're looking for, look, it almost seems like a beach cruiser. It's like, you just kind of drive around 30 miles an hour around the beach or something, and it looks phenomenal.
Right.
I get that. But if you really want to hit a back road or something like that, you get, again, a Miata. So it's just like, if you're really looking at going to give you that
if you want
feeling,
a car, buy a Miata.
Go get a car all day long. Right. If you just want to go and park and have someone see you, nothing touches this. better than forget about a Corvette or even Ferrari. This thing stands out. It really does.
We had this lady come up to us when we'd stopped to get some lunch, and she comes into the store, this general store in Granville we were eating at, and she goes, she said, "Are you the two driving that contraption out there?" and that contraption maybe sums it up more than anything.
I think that's better than sensation.
So that's one thing I said in one of my previous videos is in the Slingshot, I got far more people that were interested in what this thing was than I have in any other vehicle I've ever driven. I haven't really driven a whole bunch of sports cars or anything. I would imagine like a Lamborghini or something like that would get a lot of commentary everywhere you went, but a Miata, not going to. A Miata is more likely to get cute commentary as opposed to the Slingshot that's going to get just people in awe of what it is they're even looking at. I experienced that everywhere I went with a varying degree of younger, older, just everybody seemed to want to talk about what is that thing you're driving that looks cool. Even more than my motorcycle. I have a 2018 Heritage Harley Davidson, and motorcycle people, they all like to talk about it. But this Slingshot seemed to get the motorcycle and car enthusiasts and everybody in between, and even people way outside of that fray, just saying like, man, what is that? That's pretty wild looking, and what's it like to drive? And definitely a head turner for sure. I actually never experienced anybody say anything negative about it to me, which is interesting. Aside from we had like two coworkers at the time who were like, man, I don't get it. And then I would catch them like in the parking lot, just like looking at it. And it's like, I see you. I get it.
Yes.
Swap that out.
Contraption.
Anyway,
I like it.
So the last question I want to ask you guys is, if you were going to have a vehicle for the weekend that you wanted to be seen in, is there any vehicle that you'd rather have than this, or to be seen in and the attention you're going to get, is the Slingshot the one for you, Jake?
Slingshot is not the one for me. It's a great question. Obviously we talked about the practical choices. Somehow the Miata,
grab the manual and reassess it, please.
You know what the answer is? No, this just came to me. Get a classic car. Get
like
yourself
an old muscle car or something?
You don't have to go back that far. Give me like a 1992 Toyota MR2 Turbo. Give me a Mazda RX-7 from the early 90s.
If you want to wrench on
you can
stuff,
still get those for
sure.
cheaper than you would pay for this Polaris. And you know what? It's going to stand out more.
For some reason, I thought about the Chevy SSR. which came in like,
yeah,
you know,
that might be the best.
It was like this like 2-door
answer.
I don't know why, but that's really weird.
For
it
an
looks weird,
vehicle.
and you can take the roof off of that too. So, and you get a better sound.
That is a winning answer. I think that specific vehicle, something that's like older like that, forget the Miata. I think the Miata, most people aren't going to care about, and I don't think it draws as much attention. That SSR, absolutely, or maybe even like the Plymouth Prowler would be another good answer to like something that's just super crazy weird. That again, not tracking it because you're not going to track your SSR either. So these are just different approaches to answers about. Well, you can get yourself like an old classic Toyota and like have fun with it on the track. These answers of an SSR or mine of like a Prowler or something unique like that is back to the point of, something fun to just kind of cruise around town.
So with that, let's move on to audience questions. Don't forget to send those questions, comments, 30-second video clips to talk.
So going into these talking cars questions, they actually go off topic with the Slingshot. But I am so blown away. First of all, why for the life of me, these guys who are going to judge it to very heavily towards like a Miata or a car went with a well-known bad automotive or not great automatic transmission is beyond me. Absolutely beyond me. Because I think if they did the manual, they would have had a much better understanding of what this vehicle was meant for and who it was built for. But maybe that would have put them even further down the rabbit hole of judging it as a track car and gone even further off the deep end. But again, it's just so weird to me watching people try to judge this and trying to figure out what they're looking at and then how to compare it to things when it's almost uncomparable. But it's not bad. I thought it was an awesome vehicle. It's stuck in my head as something that I am absolutely, undoubtedly interested in maybe eventually owning a Slingshot. Right now, I probably don't know if I have the space for it. I'm in this weird position right now. I've got my 2018 Harley-Davidson Heritage 114. Love that motorcycle. I would like to maybe go to a bigger touring bike. I don't know if I can swing keeping both motorcycles, but I would love to have a bigger touring bike for longer jaunt type things, being able to pack a little bit more on it. But now I'm also looking at side-by-sides here. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, for those of you who aren't aware. I look at these side-by-sides and I'm thinking, man, there's so much you could do with it. But then the Slingshot is so fun on the road. I really enjoyed that thing. I'm running into a problem now of just everything I touch on this channel. I develop a little soft spot for it, and I am not afraid of looking at something. When I got the Slingshot delivered here, I had never ridden in one, barely had really seen him around all that much, just never really paid attention. And when I did see him, I was one of the people that was like, what am I looking at? After I drove it, I have no problem taking something that I didn't quite understand and looking at it again and just, I guess, trying to figure out, I find it exciting as a motorhead, somebody really enjoys anything that's, motor propelled, essentially. I just enjoy the quirky things and finding the endearing parts of them, even when a lot of people don't necessarily understand what they're looking at. I did the same thing with American Bike and Trike here locally. They convert Harley-Davidsons and other motorcycles into quads. And man, do people not really, they're just, so many people are like, what is that? Why? And instead of going further into trying to figure it out, they just stop there and go like, man, forget it. I want nothing to do with it. It's really unfortunate to me because there are so many people that I feel like probably 90% of these people, if they would, twist the throttle, smash the gas, whatever you want to call it, of whatever any of these niche vehicles are, I truly believe 90% of these people would just be like, okay, I get it. And then only 10% will be like, nope, still just want my thing. So I just love watching kind of that or being a part of exploration of new, exciting motorsports sort of things, and just even the traditional. So it's just funny to watch some of these traditionalists, so to speak, try so hard to kind of like cram something into a genre when it probably doesn't fully belong there anyways. And I was very fascinated by watching this video. So with that being said, guys, thank you very much for tuning in. If this is your first time tuning in, please hit that subscribe button down below. Remember, likes go a long way to help support the channel. I will see you guys next time.